All right, are we good? Can we see it?
You can.
Wonderful. All right, I'm gonna move you guys to the side. All right, here we go. Thank you everyone for coming. What an honor it is to have all of you here to support me for my final defense. What an honor it is to spend this time with you. The title of my research is A Tale of Two Giants, a qualitative approach to navigating an identity as a counseling generalist or a counseling specialist in clinical mental health counseling. Before I begin, I just want to take a second just for some super quick acknowledgements. I want to just thank my committee, Dr. Pickens, Dr. Dixon, Dr. TRW, for just really showing up in a very dark time for me and providing some amazing support. Thank you so much for talking me off the ledge, all three of you, and I appreciate your support. Doctors Marla Curtis, Dr. Jasmine Sims, thank you guys for just walking alongside me, even through my setbacks, and I really just appreciate your support. Dr. Isom, you really just transformed teaching for me, the idea of teaching for me, being able to TA for you, and I appreciate the experience that we had together. Dr. Hunt, supervisor, mentor, big sister, I love you to death. I don't make it this far without you. Um, my wife, Kalea, thank you for your support. Um, Holding down the gremlins in the house, while I log long hours. I appreciate it, and I love you to death. And for my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who commissioned his Holy Spirit to get me to this point. I thank all of you for your support and getting me here. Um, let's get busy. This study examines how clinical mental health counselors experience and navigate professional identity either as generalists or as specialists. While KCREP broadly prepares counselors to become what we call the minimally prepared counselor, the profession is yielding counselors in specialization, but often without clear and developmental guidance or direction. This creates a tension in training, in supervision, in the early postgraduate practice. Because of this, we leverage two research questions. The first one is how are graduates who are coming from KCREP accredited clinical mental health counseling programs navigating this identity? And the second research question is what are the supports and the resources that are helping to shape their perspectives? And so those two research questions in line with Donald Super's career development model is how we approached this study. The literature review, aka the bane of my existence, consistently addressed theoretical training, supervisory relationships, fieldwork, and the postgraduate experience as separate developmental factors. However, the literature did not clearly outline steps for how to become a specialist, how fieldwork can be optimized for specialization, and how the postgraduate experience contributes to counselor identity and formation. These gaps directly informed my methodological choice and focused on the lived experience. The design that I chose to use for the study was a descriptive phenomenology approach. Since we want to know how they're navigating their counselor identities, the lived experiences and the meaning that they're ascribing to those lived experiences was ultimately what we're after. I utilized purposeful sampling as my sampling method. All ethical boxes were checked. It was IRB approved. Informed consents were provided for each participant, and confidentiality was maintained. For data collection, we utilized a semi-structured interview. Each participant was provided a survey to complete, and then that survey was the foundation for the actual interview itself, where they were able to expound upon their lived experiences. For analysis, we utilize iterative coding and thematic analysis. For trustworthiness, confidentiality, credibility, dependability, confirmability, those were all established through reflexivity and thematic and analytic consistency. And for saturation, we achieved saturation by our 11th interview. So by interview 11, there were no new themes and all themes were fully explored. We did do 12 interviews just to make sure that we had all of our T's crossed and all of our I's dotted, but saturation was effectively reached by the 11th interview. Next, I want to spend the majority of the rest of our time navigating through chapters 4 and 5. Chapters 4 being the findings and chapter 5 being the interpretive summary. But what I would like to do is I would like to present you a finding and then present you an interpretation right afterward, just to kind of keep things cohesive. So, leveraging our research questions, how do graduates from KCREP accredited clinical mental health programs navigate this identity, and what supports or resources are helping them shape their perspectives? The research provided 5 themes: supervisory relationships, the confidence competence loop, passion and calling, the cultural community context, and structural barriers in fieldwork and exposure. So, we'll dive right into our first finding. The first theme was the supervisory relationships. Supervisory relationships were central to how counselors navigated between an identity as a generalist and an identity as a specialist. The participants described consistently their supervisors either as providing direction, modeling, being supportive, or the antithesis to that was being absent or being disengaged. The lack of supervisory presence resulted in participants feeling lost, feeling directionless, and being unsure of their professional development. Supervision was experienced as shaping confidence, shaping competence, and long-term career direction. A quote that was shared by one of the participants stated that when my supervisor wasn't present or didn't give direction, I felt completely lost. I didn't know if I was doing well or if I was even supposed to be doing what I was doing. So what does this mean? What I'd like to do for the interpretive summaries of each finding is I would like to break it down into 3 sections. What was revealed, how it connects to the literature, and how it answers the gap in the literature. So what was revealed for the supervisory relationships? What it revealed was that supervision functioned as a developmental force rather than mere oversight, which was consistent with the literature. The supervisory presence or absence directly influenced counselors' professional self-concept. So when we leveraged Donald Super's career development model, he broke it down into 3 sections: the self-concept, the life roles, and the life stages. And he posited that the self-concept was where the individuals would find their core beliefs about themselves and their professional identity, and how their experiences and their exposures shaped that self-concept. And so this finding demonstrated that whenever the supervisory presence was absent or waning, the professional self-concept waned as well. How does this connect to the literature? This aligns with supervision literature emphasizing guidance, modeling, and professional development, which is consistent with what we saw in the literature review. However, this finding extended the literature by demonstrating that supervision's role in identity formation is not just skill acquisition, but developmental. So how does this answer the gap? Prior research acknowledged supervision's importance, but did not examine how it shapes movement toward specialization, which makes sense, right? Because KCREP does not profess to produce specialists. It aims to produce the minimally prepared counselor, to generalists. The research was overwhelming that counselors were entering the field to be generalists, and that KCREP, in essence, and the profession was doing its job in preparing these counselors. But the research acknowledged that supervision's importance, but did not examine how it shapes movement towards specialization. This finding directly addresses the gap by showing how supervision influences counselors on how they remain generalist or if they pursue specialization. So if I can kind of just create a small synopsis of the finding and the interpretation, is that while supervisors were not, by the account of the participants, they were not put in a position where they felt like the supervisor should shoulder the entire weight, but the the participants all stated that they looked for their supervisors to be more than just overseers, more than just people who just oversaw them while they had a general experience. They viewed them as being fundamental for personal and professional identity and career development. And then when that was missing, it caused them to struggle with their self-concept, which naturally rolls us into our second finding. Our second finding, the second theme, is the confidence competence loop. The confidence competence loop. What the data showed in the confidence competence loop was that the participants described a reciprocal relationship between confidence and competence. So we saw through this that limited confidence stalled skill development, while growing competence increased confidence, and vice versa. And so many participants stated that they felt technically trained but felt emotionally unprepared for independent practice. And this loop delayed specialization decisions, which again is in line with Donald Super's theory of career development, because he stated that in the self-concept phase is where the professional would explore, but out of that, they should be able to roll into an establishment phase. Well, the confidence competence loop is expressing to us that there's a loop that is delaying the specialization process. A participant said this: I had the skills on paper, but I didn't feel confident enough to say I was good at it yet. That made me hesitate to go any further. And so what does this mean? This means what is revealed through the confidence competence loop is that confidence and competence functioned as interdependent processes. So without reinforcements, counselors remained stuck in that extended exploration phase. How does that connect to the literature? The literature identifies counselors as being unprepared for specialty practice. But again, that is not what CACREP or the profession is claiming to do with counselor training. But this finding explains the mechanism that is sustaining unpreparedness. So the research is saying that counselors are unprepared for the practice, which is expected for specialty practice. But this finding is explaining that the confidence competence loop is the mechanism that is sustaining people in that unprepared or constant explorative loop. How does this answer the gap? Rather than in restating lack of preparedness, this finding clarifies why counselors are struggling to move toward specialization, and it identifies the internal loop that prevents identity consolidation. Can I draw a correlation between the first two themes? We saw that in the supervisory theme, that again, supervisors are meant to be more than just overseers, at least by the participants' standards. So right or wrong, positive or negative, the participants explained that they looked to their supervisors to be more than just overseers. They wanted them to help them develop, and that was fine as long as they were walking within the confines of what the supervisory relationships in fieldwork were supposed to do. But when they branched out and wanted to pursue more, that's when they begin to find some struggles. So now when they're feeling that supervisory relationship is waning, that naturally turned them internal, where there was a breakdown in their confidence and competence. The research demonstrated that lack of confidence rolled into difficulty in skill development. Difficulty in skill development caused them to feel incompetent, and then incompetence rotated into lack of self-confidence. So it's creating this loop. And so the structural relationships or structural breakdown perceived by the participants rolled into the external factors, then turned internal to their confidence and competence, which leads us to our third finding. Our third theme was the passion and calling. Passion and calling. The data showed that many participants entered training with a clear passion for specific populations, which wasn't uncommon through the research. Graduate programs, however, in this finding rarely helped participants translate that passion into a professional pathway. So what we see is that passion is resurfacing post-graduation, check this out, as the primary motivator for specialization. Specialization was frequently self-directed by passion and calling. Participants stated this: I always knew I cared about this population, but nobody ever helped me figure out what to do with that or how to turn it into a real path. So what does this mean? This means that passion functioned as the internal driver when institutional support was lacking. when institutional support was lacking. And the calling helped to stabilize identity development in the absence of formal pathways. So passion is driving where the support lacks, and calling is stabilizing when formal pathways are not available. How this connects to the literature is that the existing literature acknowledges passion in career development but treats it as secondary. Why? Because every counselor in training is receiving the same kind of counseling. If they're coming from a CACREP accredited clinical mental health program, when everyone's pathway is ultimately the same, and passion is important, but it's secondary. However, how this study elevates the literature is by showing that passion is not just secondary, but it functions as a compensation mechanism. So something that is secondary now moves into more of a primary slot. Why? Because there's a structural breakdown. So if we look at the first three themes so far, we see somewhat of a pattern happening. Participants are stating that they are looking for external support to help them to go further, right? Whenever that was lacking, they then begin to turn internal. And when they turned internal, that's when they saw breakdowns in their confidence and competence. But then once they were like, well, you know what? It's sink or swim. They moved into a passion and calling. And it actually reminded me, as I was preparing my presentation, of the old movie High School Musical. And there's a song in there that goes, no, 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 stick to the stuff you know, right? And it's kind of a silly analogy, but the premise still stands. It's almost as if the individual would revert back to their primary instincts. They would go back to what they know, what they're familiar with. And so if the structural foundation is lacking in the supervision, they are now having this intrinsic, almost self-deprecative experience. Then they now say, in order for me to get out of that self-deprecation, to get out of that exploration loop that they're stuck in, I'm going to have to rely on my passions and calling to take me as a primary motivator to make up for what I am missing in my support system. But that naturally leads us to our fourth theme, and that's the cultural community context. This finding showed us that the cultural identity and community needs strongly influence professional identity. But wait a minute. Now we're seeing three components that are influencing professional counselor identity: the structural support that they get in their supervisory relationships, and then their passions and calling that are now driving them. The participants working with marginalized populations felt underprepared vehemently by generalist training, and counselors adapted interventions independently due to the lack of guidance that they were getting from their supervisors. Now, I want to be clear in this. They all were saying that while they were walking in line with what the profession prepared them to do, supervision was stellar. But when they were ready to spread their wings, that's when the breakdown began to happen. Someone said this: what I learned didn't always translate to community I was working with. I had to figure out how to adapt things on my own. One will say that this is a good thing, but depending on the individual, it might not be. Here's what I mean. What is revealed is that the cultural community context acted as a shaping force in identity development. But wait a minute, I just told you that the passion and calling is stepping in to do that shaping when the supervisory breakdowns were happening. And so now counselors' professional identities were becoming inseparable from the community realities. And so the problem that that happens is that when we connect it to the literature emphasizes multicultural competence, but that's not unfamiliar to the profession, right? Multiculturalism is a part of our training. The ACA Code of Ethics outlines the importance of mitigating bias and being able to be multiculturally competent. But the study extends that by showing how cultural context actively was pushing counselors towards specialization. So wait a minute, they're emerging as the minimally prepared counselor to be generalists, and now they're having these circumstances that are causing them to walk out of that generalist position. How this answers the gap is that prior research focused on general competence, as we mentioned, but this finding demonstrates how the cultural realities necessitate specialization beyond standardized training models. So what does that mean? Well, let's connect four themes so far. We saw that there was a supervisory relationships are more than just oversight, right? The supervisory relationships where the participants were looking at them more as a mentor style models. They wanted guidance, they wanted direction, they wanted help with their path forming. Whenever that breakdown happened, then they began to turn intrinsically, where there are now breakdowns in their cultural, in their confidence and in their competence. Whenever they decided that they wanted to swim, what they would do is revert to their passions and calling, but then that passion and calling is now challenged by the cultural community context because the demands of the community and the demands of the culture are now facilitating what specialization looks like. So if the person is working inside of a community that falls in line with their passions, it was fine. But if they were working with a community that was different, that was forcing them towards specialization, and their passions and their callings were not aligned there, well, now the cultural community context is pushing against what they were now using as the key facilitator in compensating for the lack of their structural support. So depending on the individual, the cultural community context could help, or it could make things extremely difficult because now they're navigating identity formation on their own, realizing that their structural supports beyond the general facet of how the counselor development is supposed to happen is going to now they're now realizing that they're going to have to fend for themselves, and now they're having all of these pressures that are pushing against them for what that individual and independent practice looks like. But that rolls into our fifth and final theme, which is structural barriers in fieldwork and in exposure. This finding showed that participants entered systemic barriers across training and across early practice. These barriers included overwhelming caseloads, lack of exposure to different populations and different theoretical models, restrictive agency policies. There were several participants that stated that they were taught that this is how we approach clients, period. Stick to the script. Stick to the script, period. And if you deviate from the script, you're on your own. And that facilitated a limited guidance. And so many participants explained being forced to remain generalist and how that was widely unsustainable to be a generalist. But wait a minute, that's what the profession is doing. It's preparing generalists, right, to be able to help all people. And they're now saying that being a generalist is not sustainable for longevity. Many participants concluded that specialization was necessary. It was imperative for them to have longevity in the profession. The grand majority of the individuals who engaged in this study said that burnout was at their front door. Almost the entire group stated that. I have a representative quote here that I wanted to share. They want this individual speaking about their agency stated, they wanted me to work with every age group and every disorder, and I couldn't keep up. Being a generalist like that just wasn't sustainable. Just wasn't sustainable. So what does this mean? This means that structural barriers left counselors navigating identity development independently, which when we're seeing that there's a structural breakdown, if there's a structural breakdown in the supervisory relationship, then that independent development is going to permeate the confidence competent loop, the passion and calling, the culturally community context, and ultimately the structural barriers that they're facing here in the fifth theme. Self-advocacy became the primary pathway towards specialization once they met these barriers. But wait, that is now the third time that I expressed a primary pathway. Can you see how it's shifting? They were looking for that primary pathway to be supervisory guidance. When that breakdown happened, they relied on passion and calling. But then the cultural community context was now pushing against that. So now that took the front. But then the structural barriers now were showing them that they couldn't rely on those components individually. They were going to have to advocate for specialization. I want you to hear this. Every single participant, all 12, stated that in order for them to move towards specialization, they had to get it themselves. They had to get it themselves. The grand majority of them said they might have been pointed in a direction. Many individuals stated that the direction that they gave them fell through, didn't actually apply to them, especially for your graduate level, entry level counselors. They were getting advice on how to proceed, but for some of those trainings or some of those directions or those certifications were only for fully licensed counselors. And the grand majority of them stated that the resources they got pointed them in a direction, but vehemently didn't actually help them. They had to continually they had to continually go and meet their supervisors and say, hey, can you help me? Hey, can you help me? And the grand majority of the individuals stated that they did not get the support that they needed and that they ultimately had to advocate for themselves and look for support and look for trainings. And even in that, they weren't even sure if some of the trainings that they were looking for were right. But that's what we saw in the first theme, right? In that first theme, they were saying if they didn't get the guidance they needed, they weren't even sure if they were going in the right direction. And that continues through this. How does that connect to the literature? The literature identifies a lack of preparation for specialty practice. Again, we know that already. The profession is not claiming to do that, but this study illustrates what the lived experiences are of that lack. If they are feeling lack of preparation, what does that mean for their experiences? Well, Donald Super would posit that they get stuck in that exploration loop and never get to establish. And if they don't establish, they don't get to move towards specialization, and the chances for burnout significantly increase. How this answers the gap is that the research has not adequately explored how counselors navigate specialization. This finding shows that in the absence of structure, counselors create their own paths. The problem is they're having to do it with their hand tied behind their back. I'm looking for support and I can't get it. So I'm going to go and do it myself. But then when I go to do it myself, I'm being met with all of these barriers that are basically saying, hey, fight the bear, but I'm going to tie your hands while you do it. And that was making it very difficult for the participants to uh, proceed in their personal and professional identity. So that wraps it up for the findings and the interpretation. I'd like to take some time and walk through the limitations of the study. There are three limitations that I want to briefly go over and talk about what I'd like to do differently. The first one was subjectivity as a limitation, which is very consistent with qualitative data. This study was limited by the subjectivity that was I tried to mitigate that by triangulation, member checking, reflexivity. If I wanted to further adjust the subjectivity, if I could do something different, I would probably increase my analytic checks a little bit more, or maybe even expand my reflexive processes. I have some ideas for what that might be, but I would probably seek to expand that. The second limitation for this study was purposeful sampling was a limitation. It was easy. I loved purposeful sampling. I got all of my participants very quickly. The downside was that the grand majority of purposeful sampling came by word of mouth. What I would like to do is broaden my horizons. So with broader access, time, and maybe even partnerships, I would like to expand my regional diversity in order to kind of help some of that subjectivity to pass, and being able to increase those limitations. And then limited visibility. Because all of the research, the interviews were conducted via Zoom, there was a lack of holistic view of the client. Sorry, the client, that's the therapist in me. The holistic view of the participant, and this resulted in that limited visibility. So what I would do differently is I would love to have done in-person interviews or include a longitudinal data approach, which would provide a more holistic understanding of the client. So those are some things that I would do differently. They're not deal breakers for me, but those are some minimal changes that I would make if I could do it over. And then I'd like to end my presentation with recommendations for the future study. I have three of these as well. The first one was that I used a career development model. Donald Super's career development model was stellar. I was absolutely in love with it. I felt like it was absolutely applicable to this. If I was going to proceed and say if someone's going to follow up on the study, I would tell them that maybe including an identity development model as well, and parallel those to see if the career development model and the identity development model, if they would intersect, or if they would arrive at similar conclusions. I think it would just strengthen the study. The second is I would recommend assessing CACREP's standards for counselor preparation to see if there is room for a career track focus. And this is not to be skeptical of CACREP's standards. CACREP is doing its job and what it's saying it's going to do. And every client, there I go again, every participant stated that. But I would love to see if maybe like medical doctors or DOs and how they kind of can go into a residency and have a track, and seeing if doing that could kind of change the narrative a little bit for the counselors and the counselors in training. And that rolls into my third recommendation is exploring what optimizing fieldwork would look like for counselor identity development. So if somebody wanted to be in child and adolescence, why not say, hey, let's find you a site that that prioritizes child and adolescent work. Or if you want to do more with psychosis, let's find you an inpatient or an outpatient community mental health center where you can work on those specific individuals. And much like social workers aren't allowed to stay in the same place for all three of their practicum and internships, something like that could be beneficial. So seeing if something like that could help streamline this process towards specialization. We already know what generalization looks like because the profession is doing its job in doing that. My recommendations are to kind of streamline the specialization process to see if that would help solidify, get those counselors out of the get those counselors out of that exploration phase into establishment, into walking in their identity, to establish more longevity for counselors in their identity. And so, with that, that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Xavier. Appreciate it. All right, so what we're going to do now is we will let the committee ask questions, and then we will end on allowing the rest of the audience to ask questions. Xavier did ask before, and so I'm going to have the committee go into a separate room. And Xavier, if you would like people to stay for the decision and our discussion when we return, that's fine. If that's what you would prefer.
Mhm.
So I will let you make the determination because I'll leave you in the room with everybody.
Yes.
So because I won't be here. But let's start with the committee. Dr. Dixon, Dr. Rush Wilson, do either of you have any questions that you would like to ask Xavier?
Yeah, first of all, excellent job. I really appreciate that I've given thumbs up through it because I clearly heard you take advice and make comments about things we had talked about, and I really, really appreciate it. I really like that you noted the minimally qualified. I'm about to put your name out there probably because as I work a lot with NBCC, I'm curious on your thoughts on this when they are taking their NCE, the CPC. The purpose of the CMHD programs is to train the minimally qualified person, right? You know that. Um, what would you say to an individual who graduates from a program, a CMHD program, and they are just now starting their postgraduate hours, and they are looking for a site supervisor, looking for things? Do you believe that is a good point for them to work on their basic skills, or should they be looking at developing a specialty?
I think that they can both work in conjunction and in tandem. What I mean by that, especially as the internship coordinator for our site, I always start our students off with working on their basic and advanced skills. I mean, I love theory, I love CBT, I love narrative, I love ACT, but before I even let them kind of having those conversations, I want to see, can you do open questions? Can you utilize summarization skills or paraphrasing? Can you utilize silence well or challenges? Like these are the things that you should have been working on in your and working on in your internship phases or the different classes, your individual counseling, your group counseling. I've gotten to do that with with Dr. Dixon, with you and Dr. Pickens, and you guys getting to oversee me in Chicago, and a lot of the counselors in training were struggling with knowing what reflection of content was, and meaning was, and feeling was. And so I would love to talk to you about psychoanalysis a little bit more. But like, can you? I believe you can be a very good counselor without having TFCBT or DBT. I think those things are great, and I have some things of my own that I utilize. But can you do those basic skills? I think there is room to work on those and work on what are you passionate about? What are some areas that you like? And I think a good supervisor, and I don't want to put her on blast, but Dr. Tracy Hunt was phenomenal for me. Outside of the Lord, I would say that Dr. Hunt really was really instrumental in my development, my ability to do emotion focused counseling. All of those came because she used a mentorship model, and we were able to talk about multiple facets of the profession, both in the near and both in longevity. There were times where I was like, I want to do a play therapy certification. And she's like, do you plan on working with kids? And I was like, no. She's like, so why are you doing that? And I appreciated that, you know what I'm saying? Because it was like, don't, not necessarily waste your time. There's, go do a pesky training if you want, but like, let's streamline this so that you can maximize who you are. And so what I would tell them is find you a supervisor that you can say, this is what I'm looking for in a supervisor. Can you provide that for me? And then seeing if they can kind of kill two birds with one stone by working on those basic counseling skills, which I think are absolutely imperative, but also working on, this is what I'm passionate about. Can we explore this?
Excellent. Okay, one more question is really more
Uh-huh.
self-validation. I just want to hear you say it out loud. Is what's your supervision model? What is so this is a counselor education supervision program. You do supervision, you're going to go out there and be a supervisor. I hear what you're saying, and I just want to articulate a little bit your supervision model for me.
Mentorship through and through. Mentorship through and through. I don't believe that supervision should just be mere oversight. I don't think at the same time that all the pressure should also be on the supervisor as well. I don't believe that. But being able, because I mentor probably 3 or 4 young men, and I'm very no nonsense. Like in the counselor space, I'm like, hey, how does this, talk to me about what this is like for you. Let's explore this. Some gentle challenging. And then as a mentor, I'm like, shape up. Like last week, someone was like, hey, are we meeting tonight? I'm like, no, I'm meeting with my family tonight because you're unserious. You know what I mean? And being
Yeah,
able to kind of not tell them what to do, but being able to provide some structural support and just being like, if I were you, this is how I would approach that. And even through Dr. Pickens, you also as my advisor, we've had some very streamlined conversations, especially being my chair. Dr. Hunt, you and I have had a lot of those conversations as well. Dr. Dixon, as we talked about methodology, and you made your recommendations on models or sampling methods, and I was like, I heard you. I heard you. Why would I
you
ask you?
did.
Why would I ask you to mentor me through it and then not take your advice? You know what I'm saying? Or at least not seriously consider it. And so my mentorship model was like, I tell all my interns that I want you to be the best version of yourself as possible. So when you come to me at practicum, I get to build you like an android, and I get to kind of help you facilitate and walk in some of that identity. Not to tell you what to do, but to kind of hold your hand as you do it. But if you're not going to take me seriously, well, then I'm disinterested also. And so
All right.
I like
Fair
I
enough.
like
I agree.
I like that model, but I'm not going to come in and expect that. If somebody wants something different, then I'm open for that. But my heart is mentorship. But it's because that's what I got from Dr. Hunt. But I'm also a very type A, very forward, very go-getter kind of personality. Dr. Hunt is the same way, and so we were a perfect fit. But I understand that that might not be everyone's cup of tea, and I'd be open to have a conversation on the front end on what that needs to look like, so that it could be a mutually beneficial experience, but more so for the supervisee.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Dr. Roche
Hey,
Wilson?
and I was just going to say one comment to that is I truly appreciate the fact that you acknowledge and see that when a student comes out or someone gets out there that the biggest issue is can you do those very basic skills? And we do struggle in seeing students who cannot do reflection of content, reflection of meaning, and things like that. So very happy to have you out there supervising, sir.
Dr.
Thank
Roche
you.
Wilson?
Yes, I have two quick comments and then two quick questions. The quick comments. Supervision. It reminds me of when my doctoral program, it was called Therapy on the Therapy. And it sounds like your supervision approach is consistent with that. And your mentorship description is kind of consistent with the developmental model. So I hope you continue to do that. It sounds awesome. Second thing is, you said you prefer to do in-person interviews, but keep in mind that what you did do with Zoom and then also having an interest in being in person is consistent with the best practices of having hybrid engagement, which is where our field is going. So it sounds like you were actually still right on point with that too. So those are my two comments. Two
Wonderful.
questions, and make them really quick. I'm wondering how you distinguish the practicum and internship portion of CMHC or the master's level with the postmaster's hours. Is that a time when one could more consistently develop their specialty areas? I developed a specialty too, and one practicum and internship were different than the
Mhm.
postmaster's hours. How do you see those as different, if you
Sure.
do?
So sort of, it's kind of a both and for me. I think the earliest exposure happens before graduation. We have
Hmm.
the research showed about theoretical training was the first time I know even when I was at the Chicago school doing residency, I had them do a form where they kind of see what theoretical model fits with you most. Like those are some of those earliest chances that they get to see what specialization looked like. And then of course being able to I had the luxury of having three different internship sites between practicum and both internships. And so I got three different supervision models. I got three different focuses on how note writing has happened and documentation and how we approach clients. And so because of that, I feel like that helped me to be well versed in some different areas. And because of that, by the time that I got to my last internship site, which is where I am now employed, is that felt very I felt like I had enough experience to kind of know like these are some not what I wanted to do specifically, but I had a really strong start on what that looked like on what that looked like, and I feel like that I think that gets harder postgraduate if you ask me, because if pre-graduation, at least you have someone, and that person's supervisor is not always going to be maybe the same person postgraduate.
Hmm.
Some states, depending on, they don't even have like a graduate level license. In some states, we know there's not that cohesion across all 50 states, but that can look different. And so I think the post-grad is hard. As a matter of fact, that was the grand majority of what the participants were stating, that post-graduation, I've moved out of that general phase. Now I'm ready to spread my wings a little bit, and now I have no direction on how to do that. And everyone that I'm asking to help me is like, but you even think about things like the MBCC and the trainings that it puts out, or PESI and what it puts out, and people are saying, well, which one's the best? And it's like, I mean, you got to figure it out. And so I think that if you're asking me to pick, I think number one, the earlier the better. But then number two, that there's a little bit more intentionality, because those same metrics aren't required for the postgraduate experience. All Maryland told me was that you have 3 years to get 3,500 hours. See ya. And some supervisors and some of the participants were like, my supervisor didn't do jack. They signed off on my hours. We met once a week to make sure I wasn't hurting my clients, and that's all that I got. And so they didn't get a whole lot. And so it's almost like you're free, go do your thing. Even Maryland actually, they didn't even send me a certificate. They just kind of sent me a little email that says, here's your license, go be good. And it's like, wait a minute. You're not going to reinforce, do I know what ethical proceeding looks like? Any of like that. So I
Hmm.
mean, thank God I had someone like Dr. Hunt who was like, all right, let's make sure we walk through this. But not everybody had that experience. Actually,
Hmm.
vehemently, that was not the experience of the grand majority of the participants. And so I feel like somebody could really get themselves in a jam and also just feel like they aren't really as cared for. And so I think that the supervisory relationship pre-graduate is a little stronger than postgraduate, but that's just me.
And then here's my last question.
Mhm.
2024 K-CREP standards requires that at least one core faculty member identifies with and actively engages in each specialized practice area. What do you think of that?
Can you repeat that, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's just really your opinion. The 2024 K-CREP standards require that at least one core faculty member identifies with and actively engages in each specialty practice area. What do you think of
Mm.
that, given what you just researched and presented?
I think that if that's the case, there's a breakdown somewhere.
Hmm.
There's a disconnect, right? Because if that's a standard, then super, I'm for that. You know what I'm saying? Because that again begins to provide some space for that individual to kind of get a little bit of support. But then when you have 12 individuals who are saying that I didn't get that,
Hmm.
we're not even talking about the majority. We're talking about 100% of the participants were stating that that wasn't my experience. That wasn't my experience. And so I think there's some general components to that. And again, if I think where that is kind of tailored a little bit is if your agency focuses on specific areas. So again, we're an outpatient community mental health center, and so because of that, it's very common that we're dealing with psychosis, right? It's very consistent that we're dealing with suicidal ideation. It's very consistent that we deal with some of these agencies, some of these components of people, addiction, and so because of that, it's a no-brainer that I get to see some of those specialization components because, I mean, my philosophy is that a counselor in training should do at least a semester in inpatient or outpatient, but that's my opinion. Just because it gives you the exposure to see some of that specialization. I think in general practice, you don't quite see that as much, and that based on the research, there's a disconnect on that. If that's a standard, it's not happening as consistently as it should.
That's all I have. Thank you so much.
You're welcome so much.
Thank you. All right, Xavier, I have a question. I'm thinking back to a lot of our conversations, and I am considering when we first began our discussion around this. I feel like from your perspective, there was significantly greater um, expectations, at least from the way you understood things, on the curriculum side of training, and how that curriculum was not particularly preparatory for an individual who wanted to seek some sort of specialization. What I'm hearing now from you is, I think, what I'm hearing now is that there seems to be a significantly greater role in both the quality and the focus of the supervisory relationship. Would that be, you think, is that accurate as far as something that you found?
Yes, I would say that it's accurate. Is it fair? Ugh, right? Because, and I think our conversations even help that the three of us in some of our conversations is, if the profession and every participant did state that they felt the profession did its job, right? There was no one that knocked K-CREP for doing what it said it was supposed to do. Counselors were supposed to be doing in their training. But that didn't mean that the expectations didn't shift. And so we're finding that the counselors are wanting more from what they're getting, whether or not that's okay or maybe not okay, but right or wrong or positive or negative, it is. And I think that that is true, that there's a greater significance on those areas, not by the program's fault, but just by the expectations of the counselors in training.
Well, it makes me think of from the curriculum side of things and sort of like in not opposition, but sort of like the flip side of a lot of the conversations you and I had initially is we talked a lot about master's level curriculum and how that could potentially support specialization, how maybe it currently doesn't, whatever. But as I saw you present this today, I wondered, actively sitting here, it's like, well, I wonder if this has perhaps a greater implications for what supervisory curriculum looks like at the doctoral level.
Mhm.
And I'm curious what you think about that in terms of how we prepare supervisors to work with people who want to be specialists rather than how we prepare specialists at the master's level.
Yeah, 100%. 100% agree. I think at the same time, I don't know that, and you didn't say this, but I don't know that twisting a supervisor's arm into doing that necessarily needs to happen because again,
Mhm.
Dr. Hunt's a go-getter, I'm a go-getter, so we were a perfect fit, but that's not everybody's style,
Right.
It's not everybody's style. And because it's not everybody's style to put somebody in that position to have to be that when that's not naturally that, I don't know. Not only do I think it might not be the best benefit, but it might cause some breakdowns.
Mhm.
Being transparent, that's honestly what, in reflection, that's ultimately what happened with my previous committee, with my previous chair. The biggest issue was that it wasn't compatible. You know what I mean? We weren't compatible. What I was looking forward to doing is just something that, she didn't quite resonate with. And that's not a problem. That's not an issue at all. But I think that highlights that if you put somebody in a place to work with somebody on something specific that they aren't also maybe passionate about, then that there could be a breakdown. So I think the same thing happens. I think it's good to empower people like that. That's like, hey, I'm big on specialization. Here are some areas that I'm big on. I know you and I have talked about addictions and some research that I want to do about addictions for the graduate level. That'd be great, being able to be a supervisor for someone who is passionate about addictions, or maybe someone like Dr. Hunt, who is in community mental health, right? Or Dr. Dixon, I know that you've done some some work for some individuals who are in Texas as well, and being able to have those matches. So I think so more so on the doctoral level, I agree that being able to say like now you don't get to, not that you don't get to, but here's an opportunity for you to not just be a supervisor. Here's where you get a chance to take your specialty and the things that you're special that you find passionate about and pair you with someone who is passionate about the same thing, and you can help them walk that road. And being able to have lived that out the last 4 and change years with my supervisor, I feel like that's absolutely phenomenal. Being paired, I don't know how this would have looked for with someone who didn't match the similar passions and identity that I had. So not that it was necessary, but I think being able to say like, hey, what we're looking for is some specialists to give students some options. I think that'd be a great idea.
What I largely, or won't say the only thing, certainly not the only thing I'm taking from this, but one of the things that's really standing out to me is somebody who is strongly interested in how supervision runs and sometimes doesn't, is a lot of what you found seems to reinforce the idea of relationship-oriented supervision, which is I think in an ideal world, those of us who are here and have, CES level education, that's kind of the way we approach that process. And it also reminds me, and Dr. Dixon you could talk to this very specifically from the fieldwork side of things, that, administrative supervision is not clinical supervision. The idea of showing up to staffing once a week, deciding whether or not you're doing an okay job, getting the thumbs up on if you're, like you said, not hurting anybody, and then proceeding to be on your own for the next week. That isn't supervision. It's not just bad supervision. That's just not supervision. And it sounds like a lot of what you found reinforces a lot of the things that come up just in general for us as faculty working with people in the fieldwork process. So in that way, it sort of really reinforcing because those are certainly areas that we frequently have frustration about. I'm aware that we are running short on time, and we still need to do our deliberation. Is that the right word? That seems so formal. I don't think I've ever
Technically, I
deliberated.
guess that's the word.
But does the audience have any questions? Dr. Hunt, your camera's off, so I just assume you have a question.
I'm sorry, you said my camera's off or is it on?
Oh, it's on. I
Oh.
probably said off.
Oh, no, I don't have questions. I have comments, but I know you're short on time, so I'll wait until you're
No,
done.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, so I'm so very proud of you. Full circle. So these same persons were in somewhat way a part of my committee as well. So this is beyond amazing. I'm so proud. I wanted to say something about the developmental model because it recognizes the counselor's growth over time and meeting the counselor where you are. And so I think to all of your points, it would be it really depends on the supervisor-supervisee relationship. And where you can insert that mentorship. I don't think that's automatic in a developmental model. I think it really depends on the rapport and the connection that you have. And obviously you and I have that. And so you were able to get to that point where we can explore the potential of specialty. And so I think maybe somehow integrating your standpoint on specialization and the developmental model when students have advanced maybe to the next level in their supervision would be excellent. But it really depends on the student and the counselor and the rapport that they have with their mentor. I'll stop right there, but I am so proud of you.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. All right, so I will put the three of us in a separate room, assuming I can do that correctly. So normally I'm able to do it correctly, but I have had some pretty big snafus with it. So I'm going to try. And Xavier, I'm going to make you co-host with my room. That way, if I mess it up, you get to stay here. Um, and if you would like for your audience to remain, that's fine. That's up to you.
Absolutely, yes. We're all watching you, Dr. Pickens. Don't screw it up.
I think they're gone.
I couldn't even get my thoughts together because I just looked at you and I'm like, oh my gosh.
I knew you were gonna make me cry.
Ah, what?
Mm.
Oh my goodness. All the things. That was really good. You did an excellent job.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
everyone for coming. I appreciate you all so much. What a big deal. He was like, there's 17 people in the waiting room, and I was like, whoa.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm glad that's over. I'm glad that's over. I was stressed. I went to bed at like 1:45 last night, woke up again at like 4:50, woke up again at 5:30. I'm like, I can't sleep. I need to just, yeah.
Xavier, you did a phenomenal job. I am just privileged that you invited me to be an observer in this event. I'm just blown away, but I've been blown away by you since you were a young teenager in our group. And so I'm truly blessed by the man that you are, that I got to see grow up and just become such a phenomenal person. And I so look forward to seeing what God is going to do as He uses you continually, as He has done. And I know that He will use you in a phenomenal way because you're open to that. And you're open to what God has for you in the future. And I also know that you have an amazing support group. You have Kalea and those girls, and they are your world, and you have an amazing church that backs you up. But know that Mike and I could not be more proud of you. If you were, I mean, you're basically, in a lot of ways, you're our child in so many ways. And so the privilege to get to watch you today and to hear you speak was phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dilda. In the I love you both so much, and I almost sprained my ankle running to invite you. Like so, I couldn't wait to like, oh, I gotta have Miss Christie come. But I appreciate that. I appreciate your husband as well,
Oh yeah.
and I love you both. Thank you so much for all of
Well, I
your
was
investment.
so excited to put the world on hold because this is huge, huge and monumental event. And now super excited that I'm pretty sure shortly I'll get to now call you doctor. I can't imagine it being any other way. So I'm super excited for you. So thank
Thank
you, my
you.
friend.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Just wanted to say congratulations. Very well done.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you and your support. You're the bomb. I'm such a big fan of yours. You have no idea. I know we haven't like
Right
interacted
back
a
at
lot,
you.
but I'm a huge fan of yours. So I was like, so when you're like, hey, I'll support you, I'm like, please come, please come. Uh, so I appreciate you. So thank you so much for your support, your constant encouragement the last several weeks as we got ready for this. And I'm gonna go back to Threads and tell them you held it down for me. So I appreciate it.
Hey, it's what we do, right?
Yeah,
When we see other folks getting ready to join the fold, it's important we show up for one another. Folks did it for me, and so I feel like it's only right that I do it for others. So you were no exception, even though, yeah, Threads family in the chat. So very well done. Excited to celebrate you.
thank you. I plan to pay it forward. Thank you. Y'all are the bomb. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Stacia, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh boy, they make you sweat, don't they? They make you sweat. Dr. Isom,
How are you doing?
I'm okay. My anxiety's through the roof, but it's over.
Such a great job. You should be so proud of your work.
Thank
What a
you.
great contribution to the field because it's such needed research and there's so much out there as you saw that supervision is so critical for the field and I really hope that you keep doing more with this work.
Thank you, Dr. Isom. I appreciate it. I appreciate it
Great
so much. And
job.
thank you again for just the experiences that we had being able to be your TA. And that's why I was like, I think I want to give academia a shot. I'm not sure if it's for me, but I want to try. And you taught me a lot. So I really appreciate just your friendship in that. I appreciate it truly. And your leadership. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
Yes.
I think you bring so much energy, and just seeing your work with students was a lot of fun. So yeah, give it a go. Why not?
Right. Why not? Thank you. I'll be calling you for a recommendation.
You got me. No problem.
Thank you so much.
Something I was thinking about too with your
Mhm,
research is,
mhm.
with those interviews that you um, how did you walk away feeling like hearing what they were saying about not having the support maybe as much as maybe you've had? Like, I was just kind of curious, like walking away from and hearing that consistently, some of that stuff
Mhm.
must have been pretty hard.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's so I actually even uh, didn't really start considering the PhD program until actually Dr. Hunt and I had a conversation about it. But what really pushed me was I didn't like the way that Maryland treated me when I got that license. I just felt like, here's your license, go be great. And I'm like, that's it? Like, that's all that you're gonna offer me? You're not gonna even give me like a pamphlet that says like, here's what your next steps should like. And I remember feeling very abandoned in that. And so Dr. Hunt was like really right on time for me with that. And so to go back now into the research and hear that the grand majority of individuals felt like they didn't have that kind of support system, and like I hurt for them because I realistically couldn't relate. I couldn't relate. My supervisory relationship was great. We had a lot of talks, both personal and professional. And so all I've known is mentorship model and long conversations, hard conversations, being frustrated, not being frustrated, all of the different things. And so I don't know, like, I truly don't know like how they did it
Mhm.
without it because not everybody was privileged to have a good supervisory relationship the way that I had. And so it hurt me because I'm like, that had to be so hard for you because I only had a little glimpse of that before my supervisory relationship had kind of took that shift postgraduate. And so I didn't stay there long. But to hear people say like even now, like I just had to pave my own way. And I was like, wow, I can't imagine. So it was really sad for me to kind of to hear.
Yeah, I bet. And like you and Dr. Hunt, I'm Marylander too. So
Mhm.
we can all relate to that, different counties wise. So maybe even like with some of this research that you continue on looking at like how to provide support for people or recommendations as far as like
Mhm.
consultation networks and that relationship piece. Because at least in, being a doc program, you've got your peers.
Mhm.
I see Dr. Curtis and Dr. Sims here, right? You've
Mhm.
got um your team, your
Mhm.
teachers, different people you can turn to.
Mhm.
So just really emphasizing that even might be something to consider for those supports so that when you're having those interviews or talking to those individuals, they're like, I don't have what you had, or you just feel for them, giving them those resources or recommendations might
Yeah.
be something to think about. But oh my goodness, great, great work.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, truly.
I'm proud of you and
Thank you.
very honored to be a part of this process with you.
Thank you. The honor's mine. Oh
Where
boy.
are they?
I know. They're trying to kill me. Uh, making me sweat. I don't know. I really am hoping to like affect some change. I'm like, if they cut me loose, I have things that I want to do. You know what I'm saying? And I would love to be able to have some components where I could even work with the state to provide a little bit more support for new counselors. But that's on the road. I need to find my footing first. But I would love to do that. And then there's some research that I would like to do, so I plan to be busy.
Hey, before we get into our thing, I just wanted you to know I've had a couple of text messages with Dr. Harris. He is on term off and he's tied up today. He had every intention of trying to get here. He apologizes, but he says, good luck. Hope you do well. All the things before Dr. Pickens shares our results.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure thing.
All right, Xavier, congratulations. We are passing you. You and I will look at chapter 5, chapter 4, just to make sure there's not anything to change. But congratulations. Straight thumbs up. We got into the room and everybody just gave the thumbs up, and we mostly sat there and talked for a few minutes because we knew we had to stay out of the room. So, but congratulations, Dr. Small.
Thank you.
Yeah. Congrats, Zay.
Oh, this was so hard.
It is hard. Being hard makes
Thank
it
you.
worth it.
It was hard. It was a hard journey. Thank you.
Hard journey, but you did it the right way, man.
All right.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay.
Hey, they all can talk. Hang
Yeah,
out.
you can
Mind,
come
Dr.
off mute.
Hey,
Talk,
come off
do what
mute.
you
We'll
want.
shut up. We're gonna hang out because we have
We're
paperwork
done.
when y'all get done.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Come speak to him, guys.
Oh,
Congratulations, Xavier, Dr. Xavier.
thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
so happy. So deserving. So deserving.
Dr. X in the building. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Dr. X, I love that.
I am
Thank
literally
you.
a stranger, and I am so honored to be here with you, sir. You are amazing. You are inspiring and encouraging as